Alrighty boys, what's going on? This is my Templar PvP build for Blackwood. I've been running this over the course for a while now and it's working pretty well, so let's get right into the stats. For stamina recovery, we're running 1800. Magic recovery running 664, health recovery 600, 6k weapon damage, 32.4% weapon crit, 7.3k pen, 20k physical, 22.5k spell resist, and 2k crit resist. For advanced stats here, 171 sprint speed, block mitigation 58%, 5200 break free cross, and 1600 roll dodge. Our max health is 28k, 25.5k max stamina, 15k magicka. With a potion, our recoveries are 2200 stamina recovery, 800 health recovery, and 863 magicka recovery. We are running the Serpent's Mundus Stone for that nice 310 recovery, and the food we are running is Dubious Camion Throne. You can run Takeaway Broth here instead if you want to run the gold version, but this works just as fine if you don't want to run the gold food. Alright, on to my race. For the race, we're running the Orc. For a Swift Warrior, reduce cost of sprint and increase movement speed by 10%. This is very good for us because we're on a kite build, and the movement speed comes in handy quite a bit. But then you also have Inflicting Rage for that 1k max health, and that nice heal when you're on the offensive, and 1k max stamina. Other races that can work for this is a Nord for that tankiness, along with that ult regen, a Red Guard for that extra sustain, and a Khajiit if you want that critical damage with a little bit more magic of recovery. Alright, let's get on to the sets. We are running 6 medium, 1 heavy. Everything is well fitted. And everything is tri-infused except for the waist. You can run max stamina on the small pieces and try on the big pieces. That can work as well. That worked just fine. So for our first set here, we're running Engine Guardian. This gives us really good sustain. And in duels, I really didn't have any sustain problems, but with Engine Guardian, with open world and stuff, this will help a lot. You can run Balorgs here, or you can run Blood Spawn if you want to be more tanky. Balorgs gives you that more burst on your ultimate, but you can also run, yeah, so that's the reason to run Balorgs, and Blood Spawn's is tankiness, but Engine Guardian gives that nice sustain. All work well. This just comes down to personal preference. For our first set here, it's going to be Deadly, which increases our weapon critical, weapon damage, and then we get 20% damage to our channeled and damage over time abilities. This affects our Dawnbreaker, our Biting Jabs, and our Caltrops, which is our main damage sources for this build, so it's very useful. And with Dagons, we are running. This set gives you 130 weapon damage max down, 130 damage, and gives you 500 weapon damage to your AoE abilities. This once again affects your Biting Jabs, your Caltrops, and your Dawnbreaker, so you're getting a bunch of damage stacking onto your main damage abilities, so it's very nice to have. And then for our rings, I'll infuse weapon damage glyphs, trying to pump out as much damage as we possibly can, and that's how we're going to do it. And then we're running a Sharpened Maul. This gives you the most overall damage, more damage than a sword. That's why I'm running Sharpened Maul. And then for our weapon glyph, it's going to be increased weapon damage. You can run shock or poisons here. I just prefer the weapon damage glyph because it's just personal preference. I'm very used to running this on most of my builds, so this is what I choose to run. But a shock glyph or a poison will work here just fine. But we're running a shock glyph on our back bar for this setup, along with reduced physical and spell resist, the Crusher enchant, and we're running double swords with power, so we get that extra healing, and the swords to get more weapon and spell damage. And we're running Black Rose here, so this increases our weapon damage by 6%, along with making a 6% tankier. So this gives us more damage and makes us a little bit tankier since we do not have very high resist on this setup. You can run Vaystran here, where you run dual front bar and Vaystran back bar. I just prefer Black Rose because it gives you more consistent damage and it gives you more tankiness. Vaystran tooltip on the setup is 12.5k if you're wondering. So let's get right on to my skills now. We are running Biting Jabs, Rally, Caltrops, Power of the Light, Camouflage Hunter, and Dawnbreaker Smiting. If you notice here, we're not running a stun on our bar at all. Our only stun comes from our Dawnbreaker. But if you do want to run a stun, you can run Toppling, Binding Javelin, or if you want to run Execute, you run Executioners. Personally, I've had no problem without running a stun, but any of these can work. The only problem with toppling is you might run into some Magicka sustain issues, since we are not running any way to recover Magicka except for Engine Guardian and tripods. And then you can run Crescent Sweep if you do put on a stun. That's also a viable option, but since I have no stun on my bar and I like to run this setup, Dawnbreaker is my only stun, and you definitely need at least one stun on your bar. And then for our back bar, running Restoring Focus, Living Dark, Vigor, Extended Ritual, Quick Cloak, and Temporal Guard for that minor protection. Important things to note here are you can run Remembrance here instead of this, but I think Temporal Guard is better for not only for that minor protection, but allows you to reset the fight more consistently, and I find it more reliable. And then I will show you the hots on our back bar buffed up. So the hots on our back bar here are 2k heal over time, 2600 on Living Dark, 24k Vigor, and 4k Ritual. So those are our hots. So when you have all your hots up, you're healing a lot over time, which makes you very tanky since you're going to be roll dodging a lot on this setup. Another important thing to note is you only get major protection when you activate one of these abilities. So for 6 seconds, so if you're on your bar more than 5 seconds, it's just better to have Temporal Guard because you're going to have that major protection up all the time. I would get all your passives and all your trees, all your two-handed passives. You don't need all your dual-wield passives though. You only need dual-wield expert, Control the Fury, and Twin and Blunt. These are the 3 most important, but if you do want to min-max, you can get the other 2. So for medium armor, I would get all your passives. I can improve sneak. This is irrelevant because we're not going to be sneaking. One important thing to note here would be the important passive reduces AoE effects by 2%. That's very useful. This is why you can get a little tanky with roll dodging, and you get block reduced cost with medium armor. So when you have major evasion up, you have 20%, and then with this you'll have 12%, so now you're at 32%, and then with minor protection and this with BRP, you will be then at 43% AoE reduced, so you'll just be taking a lot less damage from AoEs, which is just very nice. It gives you a lot more tankiness and a lot more survivability. And then for our One Piece Heavy, I would just get all your passives again, but the main reason we're running One Piece Heavy is for the max health and for Undaunted. So what that allows us to do is it allows us to put more points into max stamina, since we do have a very low max stamina pool, since none of our sets actually give us max stamina. This is very useful to have, otherwise we'll be sitting at such like a 26k max stamina. So that's just something to keep in mind. Let's move on to CP now. We are going to look at the blue tree. For important stars, are Biting Aura, Master at Arms, Duelist Rebuff, and Resilience. So these two this increases your Biting Jabs, your Caltrops, and your Dawnbreaker. And this increases your Biting Jabs, Caltrops, and Dawnbreaker. I mean, this increases part of the light, not Caltrops. Then this reduces all single target on you by 10%, very nice, and this gives you a nice crit buff since we're not running any impen. You can run Backstabber if you don't want to run this, but you'll just be quite a bit squishier. I don't recommend it, but if you want to do extra damage, be a little frisky, and you can run Backstabber and Fighting Finesse. Both these give you more damage, but you're trading off tankiness at that point, which this build does not really have any tankiness, so that is why I tend to run this and this. For important passive to get would be Piercing. I would get this first, then I would go down here for the max stamina, then get these 3 passives right here, and then I would go up here and get Precision for that crit, then I would come down here to get Blessed, and then I would fill out the other passives in here and this passive right here when you get the CP. And then for red tree, we're running Juggernaut, Boundless Vitality, Ironclad, Rejuvenation for recovery, armor, max health, and Juggernaut for that crowd control. You could also run Survival Instinct if you are feeling a little less on the sustain and you just like to have that extra sustain. You can run this. That's always a viable option. And then for important passives would be Hero's Vigor, Mystic Tenacity, Tumbling, and Defiance. These are all your important passives in the red tree. The rest you can fill out as they come, but I would focus on getting these 4 first. Tumbling I would say is number 1 because we're rolling the most. And then probably Hero's Vigor for the extra max health, so you can have more max stamina. That's how I would do this, but the rest can just put your points as they come. And then for the green tree, really nothing important in here, but I'll go over what I would run. Breakfall, of course, for that reduced damage. That's one important passive in here. Liquid efficiency if you want to save money on pots. Seed blessing for that more mobility outside of combat. Gifted rider increases your mount speed, and war mount. Those are all the important things in here, I would say. And then you can just put whatever else you want for your last star and passes, because that's more of a PvE aspect. I will show you our jabs down. We're gonna look at our jabs. We're running 6,000, 6k on jabs, 21.5k on Dawnbreaker. This is Razor Caltrops and our Powerful Light tooltip. If you also want to know our, here's our Adric Spear. So this procs for 6k, fully buffed up. This is actually 7k. If you're wondering when you have everything proc like I did there, this actually hits for 7k. So in total, with your jabs hit 4 times plus this without any crits, it's gonna be hitting for 31,000 without any reduction added whatsoever. This is flat damage. You won't do that, of course, but that's just like the flat base. For the way you want to play this build, open world and duels and stuff like that, you have 4 roll dodges that you can use really easily. They're virtually free. They didn't really see. Look at my stamina bar. It really didn't cost me anything. But after your 4th roll dodge, I would try and LOS or block until your roll dodge cooldown's back up, because you don't want to roll dodge too many times, because that's how you go through stamina. And if you roll dodge 1 or 2 many extra times, then you'll actually run out of resources, and then you'll just die. So just make sure you keep in mind how many roll dodges you're at when you're roll dodging, and make sure you're always trying to roll dodge towards LOS. Another couple important notes is when you're trying to kite, a good way to kite is to proc major evasion, roll dodge, and then purge. Continue to run, proc living dark if anyone's trying to come after you, so they get slowed. This does give you a nice 60% slow, very useful to have. And then the way I would go on the offensive is I would make sure all my hots are up on my back bar, vigor if needed, if not, it's whatever. Prop down the trops, switch back, get the living dark, and then make sure BRP's active the whole time. They go in for the jabs. They'll start to feel the pressure. Sometimes they'll roll away, sometimes try and fight back. If they ever try and fight back into you and they're not like a Nightblade, you can usually just out trade them. So just keep that in mind. So just biting jabs, Dawnbreaker if they try and roll away. That's what a lot of people tend to do. You catch the mid roll. It's very nice, very useful. Catch the mid roll while the Power of the Light's on them, and it'll just expire usually after the Dawnbreaker and another set of jabs. And then they'll just blow up and die. Or if they live from that, they'll expend too many resources from rolling and blocking that you already basically won the fight, as long as you keep up the pressure. So just keep in mind that you're not very tanky on this build. You need to make sure you have your miner up and your black rose up to get that extra 11%. And you need to make sure you keep up your roll dodges to get that extra 12% from AoE. Just keep that all in mind. You can't just sit there and face tank damage. It won't work. You'll die. So you have to be very mobile, kiting, using your slows and your purge and your major expedition to your advantage. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them down in the comments below. But that's my build for Blackwood.